Hi, my name is Zach Cotto here in Columbus, Nebraska with ACC Farms. I am the fourth generation to kind of take over here, and we've been with Niman Ranch for about 5 years. Before we got started with Niman, we were buying most of our feeder cattle and just fattening them out on a smaller scale, and then we got more into raising our own calves from our cow-calf herd, expanded that, and then got started with Niman, and it's just been a really good companionship with them ever since we started. You know, I really like what they stand for. Before we were with Niman, we were sending some natural cattle. It was just kind of a crapshoot of where they were going to go. We didn't know for sure when they got fat if we were going to find a spot for them. And then when we got started with Niman, it was really easy to work with. We knew, you know, we could plan out when they were going to go, where they were going to go. We always knew they were going to Omaha. One of the biggest things I like about working with them is you can start with cow-calf operation, grow them all the way through. We know where they're going from when they're just born to when they're fat. It's just really good fit for our operation, I guess, and I really like what they stand for. We have about 400 head cow-calf pairs. In the summer months, they go to grass, and then winter they come back and put them on corn stalks. We farm about 2,000 acres of corn and soybeans and some alfalfa. And we grow about 180 acres of barley every year that we grow from seed and raise it into a full feed that we mix into the rations. And that's worked out really well for us health-wise. As far as the cow-calves goes, putting it into their ration, they wean really well off of it when we take the calves away because they're already used to that feed, getting it with the cows. With the barley, it's mixed into their ration right when they get weaned, and they stick with part of that stays in their ration all the way until they're shipped out as fat cattle. And they just seem to have a real good health all the way through with that, having fresh feed every day. Been really happy with how that's been working, and I think Niman has been too. Most of our corn and I guess soybeans is delivered into town. Some of it's ground up for cracked corn that we store, and that gets fed all year round to help finish the cattle. We chop silage that goes into the rations as well. Our hay, alfalfa, gets ground up, goes into the rations. The corn stalks we bale in the fall, and that also gets mixed into the rations with the cows and all the way through. And pretty much everything that is in the rations is grown here on the farm. You get some minerals to mix in that help the health of the cattle, from as small as calves to when they're finished.
You're saying these cattle were on pasture?
Yeah, we had a field of rye that we put in the fall, and it came up really good this spring, and we kicked them out there for about 3 weeks, and they really do well out there. And then now we'll move them back on to this lot for a couple weeks until the weather warms up and we get some grass growing in the pasture a little better, and probably in a week or two they'll be headed out to grass until fall, when we can start putting them on corn stalks again.
So calving season for you guys?
Calving usually starting beginning of March, mid-March. We'll run all the way into kind of the first week of June with some of the end ones, and then we got a fall herd that will start beginning of October, middle of September, run into November, so kind of splits them up a little bit.
This will end up being covered in grass, right?
Yeah, we'll probably put some Sudan in there. It'll grow 6 foot tall, and then come next calving season, we usually let it out there over winter, and then they can go in there and calve, and it's really good cover for them to calve into, and keeps them dry and out of the harsher weather conditions when we get a storm like that.
How big was this pasture?
They're sitting on 35 acres right now, and
And are you guys rotating kind of pasture to pasture?
Yeah, so they're always getting rotated. Most of the pastures will fill up to where they can maintain being out there for 4 months till we like to maybe put them out there a little bit later sometimes so we can keep them out there until we get crops out of the field so they can go directly from pasture to corn stalks. So they'll stay out there till end of September, beginning of October in the grass that we move them to, and then start putting up corn stalk fence, and they'll get moved right into there for winter feed and then get moved back closer to home when it comes time to calve in end of February to March and calve them close to home, so that way we can keep a better eye on them. All of our crop acres are within 5 miles for the most part, so nothing really gets trailered a whole lot. You have a few pastures that we have a little farther away that we'll move some small groups to, but most everything around here gets moved to pasture, just walk them there, and then move to the closest cornfield we have, and then brought back home. So it really works out well for us. Behind me is where we load out the cattle when they're ready to be shipped. Usually sort them a couple hours before they're ready to get loaded, and a couple hours to Omaha from here. So we usually load out 1 load a week. We can space them out as many weeks as we want to. Niman's been really good to work with on that as far as trusting us to know when the meat's ready, getting the quality and the characteristics that they want to grade to their standards, giving us the time to feed them, not rushing into a load before we think they're ready. I think that's one thing that's been really good to work with them on. The field behind me was a cornfield last year, and we chopped that for feed for the cows, and then usually we go back into it in the fall with the drill, and we'll put in a rye or cover crop of some sort, and then that will usually get started in the fall. It'll grow a couple inches and go dormant over winter, and then come springtime it'll start up pretty early in beginning of March, middle of March, and then before we go back in and replant it, we'll move cows out there and let them graze it off and kind of start the process over again. But it really works out well. You get a lot of feed off of it and loosen up the ground again, and it's just been real sustainable for us to do it that way, and the cows do really well on it. It gives them a good spot to go spread out right after they calve. Down here we keep most of the feed. Over there we have the silage. We have some distillers that comes from the local corn plant in town. And then we have our corn stalks, some ground up alfalfa hay, and our cracked corn. And then some mineral gets added to that, whatever the ration calls for. So the minerals get supplemented differently throughout the cow's life, throughout the calf's life, all the way to when it's ready to be harvested. The cows need more mineral when they're out on some corn stalks, and sometimes we can back off the mineral because there's more in the hay that we're feeding them when they're getting a ration, and the fat cattle obviously get some more mineral for what they need as they're growing. It's constantly monitored on what they're using, what they're needing, and that's kind of how we determine what goes into the ration every day. So behind me, you can kind of see where we grow our barley that we mix into our feed rations. How we got started with that, when I was in college, we actually had a report that we were supposed to do on a sustainability report, basically, about farming and trying to find something new that was coming out, and I found this online and just kind of slowly worked our way into it. Wrote my paper on it first, and then thought it was actually fairly interesting. So we found just a small unit that grew 5-6 slabs a day, and we got that. We started feeding that to just a couple cows and really liked how it was working with them. And with expanding prices in land and everything else, we thought, well, let's maybe make it a bigger scale. So we put this barn up. It'll do 3 to 5 tons a day, depending on how full we keep the barn of feed. And it's just worked out really well for us, incorporating it into the Niman program, the Gap Cattle program, being an all-natural feed source. And they've did really well health-wise on it. There's a ton of vitamins in it, which has really helped them all the way from the cow-calf side to being baby calves, the cows getting it, going through their milk, giving it to the calves, all the way up to getting it when they're fat cattle and keeping them in good health all the way through. So kind of the process of it, it starts out as just a barley grain seed, and it gets put in the back and gets watered every hour for about 15 seconds. And then in 6 days, it just slowly keeps sprouting and growing. In 6 days, you get a full slab. Weighs about 18 pounds. Your root mass is a lot of your weight, a lot of your vitamins. Goes into the ration, gets chewed up in the feed wagon, and gets fed to pretty much everything, all the way from the cow-calf side of things to the fat cattle. It's increased conception rate in the cow-calves, it seems like, for us. Cow health, everything throughout the whole year has just been better, and we've gotten along with it really well. I guess another thing is with pasture getting more high priced every year, and trying to find pasture is difficult with having this as a feed source every single day. It's fresh feed. We're able to feed a few more cows and calves with it than we normally would be able to, and just increased our production quite a bit over the years since we've had it. We're pretty much 100% Angus, run Angus bulls with everything. We don't do much AIing at all. We don't. Angus has been really good for us as far as genetics goes. They've had really good marbling, and they've gained well. And Niman's been happy with the grade that we've been getting from those genetics, and I think that's been another important factor into finishing the cattle out. We have close to about 15 bulls throughout the year that we move around through the cows when they're needed for the calving windows that we want. The Angus bulls have been good for calving ease. We've had really good conception rates with them, and just all around been a pretty calm bull and good genetics all the way through.